Hello. People are fucking crazy. Mm-mm-mm. Hello, 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 hello. All right, I am going to start out this evening actually reading the book because this is part 3 that we're on. Hey, Jessica. In the recovery process for ending narcissistic abuse and recovering from narcissistic abuse. If you are a daughter of a narcissistic mother, this is the book that we've been reading is called "Will I Ever Be Good Enough? Healing the Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers." And all of the book readings are on my YT channel if you want to go back and listen to the very beginning. But we are in part 3. Part 3 is about ending the legacy. Hey, Kathleen. And I'm going to go ahead and start reading now. So, ending the legacy, specific recovery steps for daughters of narcissistic mothers. Now, you can use these recovery steps as it relates to any relationship that you've had with anyone who is narcissistic. It does not necessarily need to be your mother. However, this book is going to give examples as it relates to a mother-daughter dynamic situation. So you can take away the mother and switch it with brother, boyfriend, husband, sister, whoever. Just know that the recovery process is the same no matter who the narcissist is in your life. Specific recovery steps for daughters of narcissistic mothers. Now that you have an understanding of how the behavior of your mother has affected you, you can begin to heal by taking the following steps to recover from the pain. Accept your mother's limitations and grieve that you did not have the mother that you wanted. I was told by my therapist to actually sit down and have a funeral. Like, take the time to have a little funeral and to write down all of the characteristic traits that you would have liked to have in a mother, that you felt that you needed, that you didn't get, and to then mourn that specific loss of you not getting it, and to continue to do that through all of the different character traits that you felt that you could have had or needed. Separate psychologically from your mother and reframe the negative messages that you absorbed from her into positive ones. So as that happens, sometimes in order to separate psychologically, you need to separate physically and like not have a relationship with that person, so they're not further indoctrinating you into, thank you, Maria. So they're not further indoctrinating you into more narcissistic abuse. Develop and accept your own identity, feelings, and desires. This is the tricky part, because being in growing up in a household where you had a narcissistic mother, or being in any sort of narcissistic abusive relationship, you kind of lose your identity. And it does take a little bit of time for you to regain your identity or even start to figure out who you are, because you've been so programmed to be the person that those people wanted you to be rather than being who you actually are. So you do have to take enough time to find your way back to yourself, figure out what you like, figure out what you don't like. Try to think back to like what your favorite color was, or try to put yourself back in a place where like before the narcissistic abuse started to happen, and try to remember that person. Even if that person was a small child, try to get back to that person and think about the things that you wanted as a child, the things that you liked as a child, and the things that your mother or your father or whomever made you feel guilty about having certain characteristic traits or whatever it is. Try to write those things down so that you can get back to practicing being that version of yourself again. Thank you, Kathleen. Deal with your mother in a different, healthy manner. But again, sometimes you have to walk away from the relationship in order to create healthy boundaries with people that are safe in your life. Sometimes trying to create boundaries with a narcissist is very it's sometimes it's just not possible. So sometimes you have to separate yourself so that you can start to begin to form healthy relationships, and within those healthy relationships you can start to create healthy boundaries and start to work out becoming a little bit more assertive in what your boundaries are and all of those things. Work to recognize your own narcissistic traits and refuse to pass them on to your children. The next chapters will guide you through the steps of recovering from a narcissistic mother. In part one, you begin to understand and identify the problems that a child learns to deal with when she has a narcissistic mother. Part two helped you see how these problems followed you into adulthood. Now, in part three, you will see how to accept your past, allow yourself to feel grief about it, reprogram negative messages that you internalized, reframe your beliefs and views, and change your life. Just keep in mind that changing your life is a daily thing. It's not going to happen overnight, but you, in order to change your life, you have to start reprogramming your mind to get rid of those negative assumptions that your narcissistic parent put on you. So the first steps: how does it feel? How it feels, not how it looks. I wish there were a mental health diagnosis for serial grief. I am not mentally ill, mostly just sad and grieving the vision of the mother I so desperately wanted. Sunny, 39. As a child growing up, you were likely very good at denying, numbing, or compensating for your own feelings rather than allowing yourself to just feel them. You probably do this now as an adult too. Your recovery begins in this chapter. Here, I will guide you to reclaim your emotions and enhance your sense of self. Now that you have a solid understanding of the psychological dynamics you were subject to as a daughter of a narcissistic mother and how they have adversely affected your life, it is time for you to come to terms with the past. Release your unrealistic expectations of your mother and take charge of your life to heal. Now it's your time to make your life more peaceful and comfortable. What's going on at your work, Abalus? You will follow the blueprint for healing in this chapter that I used for my own recovery and continue to use for my clients. It works if you follow the steps sequentially. You will feel worlds better than you ever have. However, it is important to note that you cannot completely cure the scars of childhood trauma. You work with them, process them, and learn how to deal with them differently so that you feel better. I liken our lives to a tree. Each of us, like a tree, has roots, our upbringing, long, sturdy trunks, our development, and branches that flower and grow in our adult lives. Your trunk or development phase bears the scars, which don't really go away. They are a part of who we are, but in recovery, work helps us to treat any gashes, to fill them in, supply balm and seal them gently, and take away the old and recurring pain, changing the original trauma, allowing you to grow around it and up and away from it. Please keep this in mind so that you do not become discouraged and misled. Really, it is a relief to know that you don't have to totally remove those scars. The things that happen to us are important to acknowledge. They play into who we are today. Yet they do not define who we are today. And by working in recovery, you refuse to allow your past to tell you who you are. You accept and face your past as part of you and you move on. I believe that you begin to heal when you accept the fact that your mother was narcissistic and that she hurt you. Then you grieve for the life and love you do not have. I will teach you how to allow yourself the gift of acceptance and how to use the precious time for grieving. Read on for assistance in how to do this. And there is a 3-step recovery model. So I'm going to turn it around so you guys can see. Whoopsie. So step 1 is, hey lady, how are you? So step 1 says to gather background information, identify the problem, diagnose the problem, understand the problem on a cognitive level. Step 2, process the feelings related to step 1. Grieve, feel, reprogram negative messages. Step 3, reframe, view differently, make decision to change, and then change. Hey, Allie, thank you for the gifts. The 3 steps of recovery. Recovery entails 3 steps. The first step is to understand the problem, to diagnose it, and to get the background information that defines it. This is true for any emotional or psychological issue you may deal with in your life. This is what a therapist works on with you in the beginning of a therapeutic relationship. You've just completed step 1. You've read about the problem and how it plays out in symptoms and life patterns. This is the cognitive or intellectual understanding that you will need to go on to the next step. Step 2, you process the feelings related to in the identified problem. This is what the chapter is about. As a daughter of a narcissistic mother, you had feelings that were not often validated or acknowledged. The earlier sections of the book helped you to identify them, and now it's time to work with those feelings. I am going to tell you something very important that I have learned in 28 years of being a therapist. Most people like to skip step 2. This step. Daughters tend to like step 1 and love step 3 of recovery. But most understandably, we want to skip the most important step that makes the biggest difference because it is painful to wade through the marshes of past trauma. It is difficult to push through the denial and let yourself feel the pain because who wants to feel pain, right? Lauren, 31, said to me in therapy, why does reliving all of this make me so angry? I really got the short end of the stick. Why did this happen to me? When I described the ideal mom to you, it made my heart sink. reading my diary to you. It hurt so bad and made me so mad. Why didn't I get an apology? I don't want to go through the recovery process. I just want it to be over. Isn't that the truth? Elise 54 states, and as an adult, I am just learning to be in touch with my feelings. I certainly didn't learn this from my mom. I can still picture her and how she could and how controlled she was with feelings. She would put on her sunglasses and get this stone cold face. If I got emotional, she would say, "Stop it, or I'll slap you." Nonetheless, the second step is where you get to learn how to deal with those difficult things called feelings. It's not fun, but it's worth it. When Lauren, Elise, other clients, and I allowed this grief process, we began to see how we could finally let go. Processing feelings is very different from just talking about them. To process means to talk about the trauma and simultaneously feel the pain in, ooh, this is a hard word. Cacophonous. It's Cacophonous. Cacophonos. Let's look that one up. Let's look that one up so I can pronounce it right. Sorry, sometimes when I don't know how to pronounce a word, I'll just say it how I think it is and then just say whatever. But I really want to know how to pronounce this word properly, so we are going to look it up. Okay, so cacophonous. There we go. Cacophonous. I learned a new word today. Where was I at? Where's that weird word? Okay, there we go. Blasting rock concert. You can tell something in a story form without feeling it, but that is not processing. This is the only way to release trauma from your body. For example, I can tell you about going to my grandmother's funeral and fill you in on the details about her death, the service, the people, the family, the minister, the flowers, and the travel. But this is talking about the funeral and her death. It is describing the events. If I were processing it, I would be telling you the same story, but feeling the loss and the grief at the same time. In this very different scenario, you would see my tears and feel my pain, and so would I, as I described the situation and how it affected me. This chapter will help you to engage in this kind of grieving. When people skip step 2 of recovery, step 3 doesn't work. I believe that this is why many therapeutic programs are unsuccessful, because folks skip the most difficult part. We have to clean out trauma before we can learn to look at our situation in a healthy and different way. Step 3, briefly, is about reframing a therapeutic word that means looking at the problem through another set of lenses or in a new way. This is the fun part of recovery. When you begin to see things differently and become free of the symptoms and the effects of the trauma of having a narcissistic mother, you make decisions for yourself that are very different from when you were feeling like a victim of wrongdoing. You begin to get in touch with your real feelings, values, and belief system. You find the authentic you and allow it to function in your own way. This is freedom. And I wish this for each reader who is here with me. A closer look at recovery. We move now to specifics for healing the unmothered child. The 5 basic areas to be covered in part 3 of this book are listed here for easy reference. Clearing trauma is incredibly hard. Hey, Bajork, thank you, Allie, for liking the live. Thank you so much. Accepting your mother's limitations and allowing yourself to grieve. separating psychologically from mother and reframing those negative messages, working on your authentic sense of self, dealing with mother and your relationship with her in a healthy way, treating your own narcissistic traits and refusing to pass on the legacy to your own children. Let's begin with acceptance. Acceptance of mother's limitations. To realize that your own mother may not be capable of real love and empathy is shocking. If you ever allowed yourself to think this before, you might have been unwilling to accept it. Mothers are supposed to be the most reliable source of love, comfort, and empathy. And if your mother did not provide that for you, you most likely denied your feelings about it. Daughters often blame themselves for their mother's inability to love them. Remember my client who said, "If my own mother can't love me, who can?" Accepting their mother's limitations is difficult for all daughters. Martina, 25, says, "My mind has given up on having a loving relationship with my mom. I have 25 years of evidence, but in my heart, it hasn't sunk in for real. It's a twofold thing. When she is nice to me, shopping for suits for work or chairs for the house or paint chips, I get lulled back into it. I get my hopes up that maybe this time will be different." Allie, I'm reading a book called Will I Ever Be Good Enough? Healing the Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers. Many daughters never give up the hope. Sandy, 32, claims, "I always wanted," sorry, I'm trying to get my daughter's picture out of view. Oh, there we go. Okay. "I always wanted a normal mom, one who doesn't dress like a hooker, who doesn't flirt with your boyfriends, who has normal holidays, who loves me and my boyfriend and showers us both in love, goes on family trips and has fun. One who doesn't compete with me and isn't threatened by me and is proud of my achievements and what I have done. Do I have to give up on all of this?" Well, I'm so glad you're here, Allie. I'm glad that it's helping. Before you can grieve, you have to accept the reality of what you have gone through. Think of it like this. A teacher trying to teach a 3-year-old to read at college level might feel disappointment, anger, even shame at his failure to accomplish this goal until he realizes, of course, that the student is not really capable of the task. Most narcissists lack the capacity to give significant, authentic love and empathy, and you have no choice but to deal with this reality. Accepting that your own mother has this limited capacity is the first step. Let go of the expectation that it will ever be different. Most daughters I know have gone through long periods in their lives not understanding this, always wishing and hoping that the next encounter with their mother will be different. This sets up not only unrealistic expectations for the daughter, but it encourages her to keep going back and trying again, for which the reward is additional sadness, disappointment, pain, anger, and exasperation. After all, we are talking about your mother, the person who was the center of your world and whom you loved and needed more than anyone else. I want to acknowledge again how difficult this is to do, but you must do it so that you can move on towards your own recovery. Remember also that narcissism is a spectrum disorder, and our mothers may have varying degrees of narcissism. Mothers with fewer narcissistic traits are more likely to have some hope of recovery if they are motivated to do so. But the further along the spectrum your mother is, the more likely it is that she will not change or seek treatment, and therefore you must accept this fact. I'm glad you're listening while you're cooking, Bajork. Many of my clients wonder, how do I do that? Remember that you cannot change others, you can only change yourself. How you view things and how you deal with your own perception is within your control. Changing your mother is not. You may wish that you could drag your mother to therapy with you, and so many women do that. Sometimes this is worth pursuing, sometimes not. In all events, however, the success of the recovery work rests entirely with you, the daughter. Let go of the belief that your mother can or will be different and will ever be able to give you the love that you deserve. Letting go will free you and allow you to find yourself. Decide to accept and realize that mom's inability, her incapacity, her illness, her limitations have hurt you. This beginning step takes you out of the denial and forces you to deal in reality. It is a move towards health. Decide now. This act will give you back the control you need to pursue the important process of grief that follows. How do I know I have totally accepted my mother's limitations? To determine where you are in the process of accepting your mother's limitations, you can ask yourself the following questions. Do I continue to wish and hope that my mother will be different each time I talk to her? Do I continue to have expectations of my mother? Have I accepted my mother for who she is? Am I expecting someone else to meet my childlike needs because I have given up on my mother? Do I continue to try to get my childlike needs met in relationships instead of relying on myself? Am I looking for a man to replace my mother? Do I feel a sense of entitlement about my needs? Am I now relying on myself to meet most of my needs and someone else is there for me? Do I see it as an adding blessing rather than my due? Every person who is dealing with a narcissistic person has to deal with that person, differently, because not everybody is the same on the spectrum as it relates to narcissism. When you have successfully completed the acceptance part of recovery, you realize that no one can really meet your childhood needs, and you choose number 8 above. The part of life when you were entitled to that kind of maternal nurturing is gone. You are willing to grieve the loss, but fully understand that you can't go back and get it, and you can't make it happen now with someone else. Remember, as an adult, you are not entitled to this. You are responsible for yourself now, willing to accept this accountability for your own needs and to find a way to meet them. With this in place, you are ready to grieve. Teach yourself to grieve. Deal with your feelings before they deal with you. The rehab counselor in the movie Postcards from the Edge. The grief process begins with another decision: to let your feelings be there. I had to teach myself how to do this, particularly when my feelings were sad or angry. As I learned to feel, there were some days when I would stay home from work, send the children to school, close the blinds, get the pillows, and just let myself cry, scream, hit pillows, or do whatever I needed to do to let out the steam. At first, I just sat there and no feelings would surface, but I knew that there were mounds of feelings because they would come out in other ways when I least expected them. Eventually, giving myself this time, my tears would begin to leak and then pour. The trick was to let them be, to feel them. This is difficult when you have been taught to stuff it or suck it up or to not feel anything, to be phony, to pretend everything is all right when it isn't. Sit with those feelings, sit with the pain, manage the anxiety and depression that come with it so you can work through it. Don't try to talk yourself out of it. Others around you may try to do this. No one wants to see you hurt, and your loved ones may not understand how important this is. So don't listen to them. Let yourself feel. When the old denial tries to reassert itself or the critical internal messages begin again, chase them away. Tell yourself that you deserve this time to heal. It is common for you to feel like a wimp or to call yourself a baby. I do this on a regular basis. Even now, when I have feelings to process, I have to tell myself it's okay to be a baby right now. Babies are sweet and innocent. You won't be a baby forever, I promise. It doesn't last because you work through it in this very way. You may begin to try to rationalize away the pain. I shouldn't feel this way, or I didn't have it that bad. This won't help. Whatever is there, you need to release. Let it be. Sometimes, in order to do this, you have to be quiet and take time to be alone. If you are used to keeping busy to avoid the pain or to using a substance or some addiction to numb the pain, you will notice the feelings coming up when you slow down and sit quietly or allow yourself to be alone. This is very important to do. Set aside some time alone solely for this grieving process. Do it several times until you begin to feel relief. Try several different things until you find what works best for you. I do best when I am home alone with the shades drawn. Some women like to take long walks, go for long runs, hike in the mountains, go for long drives, or sit in coffee shops. Everyone is different, and it is important for you to find your comfort zone. The most important thing is that you allow it to happen. Having been taught not to do this, daughters of narcissistic mothers at first feel awkward giving themselves this emotional attention, but you can do it. The stages of grief. The natural grief process, as written about by Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, is on death and dying, consists of 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. For your recovery, we will be using these stages too, but we put acceptance first. We have already been engaged in denial and bargaining with Mother for a long time. Thank you again, Allie, for the gifts. Come back whenever you're ready. I'll be here. Where is that? Oh, we have already been engaged in denial and bargaining with Mother for a long time. And without acceptance, we cannot move on to deal with our true feelings. Without acceptance, we stay in denial. After acceptance, we can process the anger and depression of our loss so that we can free ourselves from the pain we have felt over a lifetime. Let's look at some examples of how this works for us. Our stages of grief. Acceptance. We have to accept first that Mother has limited love and empathy to give, and we cannot allow ourselves out of the denial and learn how to feel our feelings. Acceptance is our first step in recovery after we have realized our problem. Denial. As children, we had to deny that our mothers were incapable of love and empathy so we could survive. A child yearns for love above all else, and we needed the denial to keep growing and surviving. Bargaining. We have been bargaining our whole life with Mother, both internally and with her. We have been wishing and hoping that she will change, that she will be different the next time we need her. We have tried many things over the years to win her love and approval. Anger. We feel intense anger and sometimes rage when we realize that our emotional needs were not met and that this neglect has affected our lives in severe adverse ways. We feel angry at mother and ourselves for allowing patterns to develop and for being stuck. Depression. We feel intense sadness that we have let go of the hope for and the vision of the kind of mother that we wanted. We realize that she will never be as loving as we want her to be. We feel like orphans or unmothered children. We let go of all expectations. We grieve the loss of the vision of those expectations. During this grief process, you will bounce around through all of the stages, back and forth. Don't move on until you solidly accept that your mother was indeed narcissistic and did not give you the love you needed and wanted. For only they can hold on. For only then you can properly grieve. If you find yourself not accepting, go back and work at it again. It is the prerequisite for the work to come. Use a journal. Using a journal to get through the recovery process will help you immensely. Throughout this recovery program, I will be referring to how writing things down in a journal keeps everything in one place. Journaling is a way to record the feelings that are coming to the surface and also helps you to review them and check on your progress. Some daughters like to write things out longhand, while others are more comfortable typing on a computer journal. I have a grief file on my computer that I visit at the end of every day. There, I can dump feelings that have surfaced that I need to deal with. Writing down feelings is another way of getting them out of your system. And by journaling, you are reinforcing the release of your trauma. So don't worry about the spelling, the grammar, or sentence structure. Just write whatever is coming to you at that time. Many daughters have resisted using a journal at first because they do not like to write or they are fearful of someone finding the information. That was one of the reasons why I stopped journaling, because people were finding my journals and they were taking that material and they were using that material against me. So I quit writing because I didn't want anybody to use my own words against me. But now that I'm like in the home by myself, other than my children, I feel safe enough now to start writing in a journal again, which I've been doing for the last couple of years. So if you do not feel safe having a written journal like in your bedroom or whatever, the iPhone app actually has a journal app on the phone now. So you can always type it in your journal app and then add like a lock on it or a passcode so nobody else can get inside of it, so that whenever you write somebody down or write something down, it's only for you to see, and you don't have to worry about anybody taking your thoughts and using your thoughts against you. Because there's nothing worse than feeling like you've taken the time to like express your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, and then somebody takes those thoughts, feelings, and emotions and like throws them up in your face. You commit to writing down, keeping track of it, and monitoring your progress. Your health and happiness are worth this investment of time. You want to take control of your own healing and deal consciously with these lifelong feelings, or they will control you. Grieving the mother you never had. Every little girl deserves to have a mother who is crazy about her. If you didn't have a loving mother, you have a right to grieve this loss. As you let feelings come up, recognize them and write them down. Start with a list of what the ideal mother would have looked like for you. Hold on. Yeah, definitely don't let anyone know what you're feeling or thinking until you feel like that person is a safe person to talk to. I haven't had many safe people in my life who didn't use my own trauma as a means, as a weapon against me. So, contrast what you wanted to what you had with your own mother. Face the disappointments and the pain that you felt. This is extremely important at this phase of the recovery. Find the holes, write them down. It is okay to do this. Some women wrote the following in their ideal mom list. You are so right, Dare to Be Different. They write, I think accepting the person as they are is an important point. If they have limited empathy, they will not respond to your suffering or your point of view. And that is so true. So, some women wrote the following in their list of their ideal mom. I would want to have someone I could call and tell things to, someone who understood me. I could talk to her about my feelings and she wouldn't say a thing about herself. I would want a mom to talk about me and be proud of me in real ways, in accepting ways, interested in things that I am interested in, caring about my stuff, acknowledging me. Not everything has to be about her. I always wanted to be able to let down and tell her the truth and know that she would have taken care of me. I wanted to have feelings and have her stand there and feel them too. Tell her stuff and have her handle it and not make things worse. The ability to comfort me and protect me. I wanted a mom who had a clue about my life, not one who was distant and unsupportive. I wanted her to ask about and care about her grandchildren. Every year or two, she asks me how I am. Would sure want that to be different. I so wanted and needed a mom who dealt with real feelings and was strong emotionally. A mom who let me develop my real self and didn't expect me to be such a showpiece for her. Some empathy and comforting would have been a blessing, and I can't even imagine that with her. Even though most daughters feel sad that they did not receive the proper love from their mothers, they have a deep belief system ingrained from childhood that they do not or did not deserve a loving mother, but you deserve it. And if you didn't have this love, you must acknowledge that you didn't get it and that as a result, you have this hole, a void in your emotional development. Facing this sadness is crucial to developing your sense of self today. I'm not saying that you become permanently sad about this, but that you recognize it, face it, and allow yourself to feel sad about the pain this has caused you. We will move beyond this stage of grief. This is not where you will live the rest of your life. Don't listen to others as you go through this process. Well meaning friends and loved ones often say things like, forget it already. I'm sure y'all have heard that. Like, just get over it. It happened such a long time ago. Why are you still harping on it? You know, that kind of shit. You can't undo the past. Quit trying. Quit thinking about the past and be in the present. Those closest to you and some not close will discourage you from doing this important work because they do not understand just how important it is. They may not want to see you suffer, so they try to fix it, but they don't understand that if you don't face this sadness, it will remain part of you forever. Do not listen to this unqualified advice. That is precisely why so many people today are projecting their feelings, misbehaving, creating crisis for themselves and others, suffering from depression and anxiety, and are not being accountable for their own actions and emotions. They're not facing the truth about their own pain. I am giving you, from personal to professional experience, the key to working through the third step of recovery so that it is effective. If you ignore this step out of fear or because you listen to others' opinions, your recovery won't work. This step is the most important step of recovery. Sometimes children understand the need to grieve and cry better than adults do. As I was writing this chapter, a friend emailed me a story about a 4-year-old who understood something that many adults have forgotten. The child's next door neighbor was an elderly man who had recently lost his wife. Upon seeing the man, the little boy went into the old gentleman's yard, climbed onto his lap, and just sat there. When his mother asked what he had said to the neighbor, the little boy just said, "Nothing. I just helped him cry." Isn't that sweet? Your grieving may take the form of intense sadness, anger, and even rage. Don't act on these feelings other than to write them down. Don't be destructive to yourself or others, but let yourself feel these emotions. Grieve until you can't stand yourself anymore. I know I'm done with grieving something when I'm sick of myself. Eventually, you will go from feeling like you are carrying huge luggage with you every day of your life to being a light traveler who has discarded her baggage and is now feeling only intense relief. The, the expected guilt. Guilt will rear its ugly head. Our culture teaches us, thank you, capacity. Our culture teaches us that good girls don't hate their mothers. So, as you feel the anger, rage, and sadness, you can expect to feel the guilt too. Let it be okay to feel guilt for right now. In nearly every interview and clinical session I have done with daughters of narcissistic mothers, the daughters will mention how bad she feels that she is talking negatively about her mother. It is taboo that you must work through to get to the other side. I am not advocating that you hate her or express your anger to her. The rage will not last if you allow yourself to feel it now. You have to face your losses and disappointments before you can get past them. You are aiming to get past blame to that point of deeper understanding and peace within yourself. This will allow you to be at peace with your mother too. Martha, 62, tells me, "I had a guilt attack before this interview. My mother's favorite expression words, the bird shits in its own nest. Don't take it elsewhere. She would be horrified and furious if she knew I had talked about her." Grieving the loss of the child you didn't get to be. I think that this is where I need to grieve the most. The next specific area of grief is grieving for the little you who didn't get to exist because you had to be an early caretaker for your mother and sometimes for the whole family. Think about what you might have been able to do if you had been allowed just to be a kid. Imagine yourself doing those things right now. Write them down and again, look at what you missed out on. Let your feelings be there. Feel them. If you are artistic, draw some pictures of you doing the things that you wanted to do. We will be discussing this more in chapter 12. When I first worked through this stage of grief in my own recovery, I used an exercise that I often use with clients now. I would sit in a rocking chair after my children were in bed and rock, close my eyes, and imagine myself as a small child. I would get this visual of a little girl with long blonde braids and red cowboy boots. I would then hold out my arms and ask her to come to me and tell me what she needed from me. At first appearance, she was sad, stomping, red-booted, angry little kid with flailing braids, but as she talked to me, I became aware that I had to take care of her now and recognize what she had missed as a child. We would cry together in that rocking chair. I spent a lot of time doing this exercise repeatedly. Your inner child will talk to you if you invite her in. Write down in your journal what happens in each interaction. Another technique that is helpful in getting in touch with your little kid needs is what I call doll therapy. Go shopping and find a little girl doll that resembles you between 3 and 8 in age. Look until you find a doll you love. Then bring her home and talk to her. Keep her on the bed, dresser, or couch so she is in plain sight to remind you that she has needs. Ask her what she has missed out on and what she needs from you now. That's a really good suggestion. I never thought about doing that, but I think that that's a really good suggestion. Write down the thoughts that come up so that you don't lose them as you get busy in your day-to-day routines, which is easy to do. You won't be able to refer to the list to see where you still need to grieve and how to grieve yourself what you didn't get as a child. As you engage in this grief process, allow the child or doll to speak to you at different ages. Allow her to go into her teen years, even up to the age 18. Branded into many daughters' memories are the memories when they needed a mother to be there for them during the difficult teen years. If your memories begin to go even into your 20s or into adulthood, go with them. If you give yourself the quiet and the time, the feelings that you need to process will surface. It is reasonable to seek a therapist for help during this part of your recovery. Try to follow the suggestions here on your own first, as they have been helpful in my sessions with daughters. But if you are stuck and nothing is coming to surface, using a professional help in the process can make a big difference. You want to find a professional mental health provider who knows a technique called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, an area of expertise that is particularly helpful with processing feelings. That's what my therapist does, EMDR. If you've never done it, it's very helpful. Go to the emdri.org website to find an EMDR qualified professionalist in your community. This website also provides articles on EMDR and helps you understand how the technique works. You can also look at the website to see how it works and then practice it a little bit before you actually hire a therapist who specializes it, just to see if it's something that works for you so that you're not like wasting your money on EMDR therapy and it's not helpful. You know what I mean? So go to the website, try to practice it for a few minutes to see if it's beneficial. In short, it is a treatment that is designed to process trauma and desensitize the related emotions. Having used it for years with my clients, I can attest to its effectiveness, and it works more quickly than straight talk therapy. Finding the right therapist means finding one with the proper qualifications and with whom you can connect personally. The key to a successful therapeutic experience. For this particular kind of therapeutic work, I even recommend a female therapist who is older than you are. It is also helpful if the therapist is a mother or grandmother. These are not absolutes, but helpful in establishing trust and the emotional connectivity. The most important aspect of the first steps of recovery for daughters of narcissistic mothers, however, is doing the acceptance and grief work on your own as much as you can before moving on to the next chapters and suggestions. If you don't work on acceptance and grief, the rest of your recovery won't take. You have to have a true and lasting recovery. If you think you have grappled with acceptance and grief, start on the next few chapters. And if you find they are not working for you, simply come back to these first steps and work them again. You have to clean this house first before you move along into emotional and spiritual home decorating. Lou 44 tells me, I have to admit, Dr. McBride, that I hated this part of the recovery, but oh, was it worth it? I have tried over and over in my life to do the rest of the recovery you told me about, and nothing seemed to work until I just broke down and felt this bad stuff. Mimi says, I have never seen myself as a raging, angry person. I always thought that meant that I was being bitchy, and I avoided it like the plague. This step was very hard for me to do, especially the feelings part. I could talk up a storm about my mother, but I never wanted to admit to myself that she had hurt me so much. It was like she won again, and I was once again a victim. I see now that I had to be this raging, bitchy victim to get to the other side. The other side is where you will begin to grow and sustain yourself. When you're ready, join me in doing that in the next chapter. Okay. So I think before we move on to chapter 11, she wants us all to work through this recovery process first. So everyone is going to have their own way of working through this recovery process. I guess what I can do to kind of help is to go through it myself in like a vlog type of situation, and then I can post it. That way you guys can look at that and figure out how you can do that on your own. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. Sorry. So she said, I'll just jump back to the beginning of the chapter again. So in step 1, it's to gather information, identify the problem, diagnose the problem, and understand the problem on a cognitive level. So we're basically in step 2. I can link, Bajork, if you DM me, I can send you the link for this book. And then on step 2, it's process the feelings related to step 1, grieve, feel, and reprogram your negative messages. So that's the step that she wants us to be working on by ourselves. So I guess what I can do is I can go through these myself, and then you can take my examples and try to work on them yourself in your own home, in your own way. You don't have to share it with me. I'll share mine with you all, just so you can get an idea of what to do at home to help yourself. I think it'll be really cathartic for me to do this myself, so I'm not scared at all to post it online. I think it'll be really helpful because I've been holding a lot of emotions in. I'm 42 now, so I've been holding a lot of emotions in for a really long time. And I think getting them out is going to be so helpful in moving forward to being a better person and just being the best version of myself that I can be. I'm trying to figure out where the pages are. Like what she says that she wants us to do. Okay. So step 1 is to grieve the mother you never had. So it's writing down some of the attributes that you would have liked to have had in a mother. My mom definitely made a mess of my childhood. And I feel like if I had done a lot of this work earlier on, I would be in a much better place than I am right now. But life is what it is. And I'm here doing the work now so that I can be a better person for my future. Okay. So it says to if you didn't have the loving mother, you have the right to grieve that loss. As you let feelings come up, recognize them and write them down. Start with a list. Start with a list of what the ideal mother would have looked like for you. Dang it, I'm trying to highlight it and it keeps dropping off. Think about either what you wanted or what you saw in other mothers you know. That's going to be a little bit difficult because I didn't really. I mean, I guess I did have friends who had mothers that were supportive and like took their daughters to like dance and stuff like that. So I'm gonna work on this evening after we get off of live, and I'll probably post the video for you all tomorrow because I've already posted quite a few videos today already. You have a sister-in-law like that? I think some of the examples that she gave, like I would have liked to have somebody I could call and tell things to without judgment. I would have loved to have had a mom that was proud of me in real ways. So this is going to take me a little bit to get through this evening. So once I get through that part, then you go through the expected guilt. Okay. So first is to grieve the mother you never had, and then you go into the expected guilt. Okay, I can do that. Remember, she said most people try to skip step 2. We're not going to skip it. It's going to be painful, but it's going to be beneficial for us moving forward. All right, ladies. Since we can't really move on to chapter 11, I mean, we can, but I don't feel comfortable moving on to chapter 11 until I've done the work in chapter 10. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on that this evening, and I will see you guys tomorrow. This week has been really good because I haven't really had a lot to do. So I've actually been able to get on live and like hang out with you all. Some weeks are busier than others. This week is dead. Like I only had one dog today. I didn't have anything to do yesterday. So tomorrow I have a few dogs, but I should still be home by like 3 or 4 and in enough time. It already went away. Ours too. It was gone by noon because the sun had came out and had melted it all away. Some areas where the sun doesn't hit still had a little bit of snow, but definitely not much. All right, you guys, I'll see you tomorrow. I've always really liked this. Whoopsie, sorry. All right.